I can't say that I started out thinking that market capitalism is dead, but I think I've been reluctantly pushed towards that conclusion. I think so many of the recent reports on our economy with tech firms sitting on huge cash war chests, buybacks, recoveries without much progress in terms of wages, the middle class continually losing ground, young people unable to start families, and the propensity for first home purchases decreasing have led me to question whether we have a million little fires that need to be put out or some sort of central explanation. And I think that actually the world makes a lot more sense if we think the unthinkable, which is that market capitalism was in fact an accident of the 20th century, and that there are certain preconditions that need to be present for it to function, which we may have actually changed these conditions through technology, not through rival ideologies. So that while market capitalism was always focused on totalitarian communism as its intellectual foe and dancing partner, in fact, it was its child technology that may have actually done it in. A lot of our training, in fact, almost all of the training that we know how to do repeatedly, like in medicine or law or accounting, is predicated on the idea of expertise, that we should teach people through a one-time major investment in their education with a small amount of continuing education to keep them current, that they should do some looped, repetitive pattern in the pursuit of expertise in a field in order to feed themselves and their families. And I think that the problem is that our educational system has maneuvered them into the crosshairs of software so that they are in fact training to do what software does best. And if you imagine, for example, a radiologist who's trained for many years in order to be able to make tricky diagnoses, potentially being obviated by a deep learning algorithm, and you'll have a tiny number of radiologists at the top of the profession for the very tricky cases, but most of the work will be handled by a machine. This leads us to a very uncomfortable paradigm. I think the reason that few of us are talking about the death of capitalism is that we don't want to leave the shore that we know until we know there's some landmass that we can swim to. And there is, as yet, no ism, not communism, not socialism, not capitalism, that I see as capable of taking over the management of these complex emergent systems that we see in our cities and in our economies. Just as man has always dreamed of flying, empirically that's something that was always impossible until it was achieved. And I think that part of the problem here is that if you go by the empirics, yes, it's always been false. But what's new is that software isn't threatening to obviate the lowest value repetitive behaviors. It's actually threatening to obviate all repetitive behaviors. So instead of moving people from low value repetition to higher value repetition, it's really threatening to move everyone who is in a repetitive framework into the only remaining thing that we have a definite edge over the machines with, which is some sort of singular act, some act of violent creation. And unfortunately, we have no known educational system that imparts this ability. And in fact, in one of my favorite films, Kung Fu Panda, the entire premise of the film is that a self-taught master has to pass the self-teaching torch to another. But the danger is that in teaching, we may crowd out the self-teaching modality. And so we have a really interesting educational puzzle, which is how do those who have proven an ability to create and do something unprecedented pass that knowledge and that ability to others, because the danger is that we'll actually crowd out the nascent ability to create in our pupils.